There is a pattern that becomes difficult to ignore once you begin observing human behavior through the lens of interculture mechanics. It is a pattern of progression, not simply of personality traits, but also of consciousness structures attempting to stabilize themselves. At first glance, narcissism, psychopathy, and transhumanism appears to belong to entirely separate conversations. One is a personality construct, one is a clinical classification, one is a technological philosophy, yet when examined through the architecture of inner coherence, emotional regulation, and identity stabilization, they begin to reveal a shared thread. That threat is fragmentation. In conventional psychology, the narcissist is described as someone with an inflated sense of self, a craving for admiration, and reduced empathy. But from an interculture mechanics perspective, narcissism is not fundamentally about self-love. It is about self-instability, more precisely, fragmentation within the mammalian brain. The mammalian brain governs emotional safety, relational bonding, and internal regulation. It is the seat of felt continuity, the space where the self experiences grounding rather than performance. In a coherent system, identity feels stable without constant reinforcement. Self-worth does not require domination. Presence does not depend on superiority. In a fragmented mammalian structure, however, something very different unfolds. Identity becomes fragile. Emotional equilibrium becomes inconsistent. Internal safety becomes conditional. The narcissistic psyche is not organized around authentic strength. It is organized around defensive stabilization. Grandiosity becomes scaffolding towards a form of escapism. Control becomes regulation. Validation becomes like oxygen. This explains the oscillation that is so characteristic of narcissistic behavior. The mask of inflation as a cover-up for collapse. The mask of superiority as a cover-up for fragmented hypersensitivity. The mask of dominance as a cover-up for emotional volatility. Because beneath the visible confidence lies an unstable internal environment. Noise instead of continuity. Defensiveness instead of grounding. The narcissist does not merely seek admiration. The narcissist seeks relief from fragmentation. If narcissism represents instability within the mammalian regulation system, psychopathy represents a deeper reorganization. A fragmentation of the heart-mind itself in the beginning stages of a disturbance within the essential intelligence that is often called survival mind. Where the narcissistic psyche still experiences emotional turbulence, the psychopathic structure often minimizes emotional interference altogether. Attachment attenuates. Empathy diminishes. Internal emotional friction reduces. From an ICC perspective, this is not emotional strength. It is emotional distancing. The heart-mind governs relational resonance, the capacity to feel others not as objects, but as living, affecting presences. When this system fragments, a profound shift occurs. Others become functional entities. Interaction becomes strategic rather than relational. Emotion becomes data rather than experience. Where the narcissist struggles with unstable emotion, the psychopath resolves instability by reducing emotional depth itself. This produces an unsettling form of internal efficiency. Less guilt, less hesitation, less effective conflict, but also less connection, less mutual regulation, less humanity in the experiential sense. Essential intelligence, the innate system of attunement and empathic integration, becomes muted. The narcissist inflates. The psychopath detaches. Both are stabilization strategies. A fragmentation of the heart-mind itself and the beginning stages of a disturbance within the essential intelligence is incredibly unsettling to them. Hence why many of psychopaths behave outwardly like Stoics, though they may not embody the philosophy. At the systemic level, sociopathic patterns emerge not as isolated identities, but as behavioral climates. Functional adaptation without relational anchoring. Rules without empathy. Efficiency without conscience. Here the pattern scales beyond individuals. Structures begin to behave like nervous systems, stripped of heart-mind regulation. Outcomes matter more than impact. Compliance matters more than coherence. Control matters more than connection. Fragmentation becomes normalized. Now enter transhumanism, Commonly framed as progress, enhancement, or evolution, transhumanism proposes the modification, augmentation, or transcendence of biological limitations through technology. Longer life, greater cognition, expanded capacities, even the redesign of the human organism. Viewed through interculture mechanics, however, a deeper psychological symbolism emerges. What does it mean when consciousness seeks not merely to improve the human experience, but to distance itself from the human condition? The human condition is defined by vulnerability, by limitation, by dependency, by emotional exposure, by mortality. For a fragmented psyche, these features are not neutral. They are intolerable. Vulnerability threatens control, limitation threatens superiority, dependency threatens autonomy illusions, mortality threatens identity continuity. Technology then becomes more than an instrument. It becomes a pathway to a form of escapism. In a neutral lens, humans use what is called the God complex as a temporary tool for survival. It is part of our essential intelligence arsenal. For psychopaths and narcissists, this survival mechanism may be on 24/7 and used as escapism and defense from the turbulence within, including what that turbulence may project onto everyone and anything that may be perceived as a threat. A threat to bring to the surface the turbulence within, confronting the turbulence within, or get acquainted with their conscience. Transhumanism from a God complex lens, at its extreme psychological expression, represents the desire to transcend internal escapism that feels like a trap, an escapism from humanness itself, a thirst to avoid reconciling with perceived limitations of humanity. Perceived limitations in this case being subconsciously the turbulences they experience within. Not integration of vulnerability, but technological insulation from it, where narcissism seeks superiority, and psychopathy and dark psychopaths seek superiority and detachment. Transhumanism in this case seeks ontological exit. The body becomes inconvenient, emotion becomes inefficiency, dependency becomes a defect, mortality becomes an engineering problem. This is the full flowering of the God complex. Beneath all three structures lies a common, stabilizing force. This force is inferiority, not as an insult, but as lived internal experience, a sense of insufficiency that cannot be metabolized internally. The narcissist compensates through inflation. The psychopath compensates through emotional reduction and measured inflation. The transhumanist impulse compensates through transcendence, fantasy. Each represents an attempt to resolve the same discomfort. When integration feels impossible, projection becomes inevitable. Weakness is located externally. Flaws are assigned to others. Limitations are reframed as injustices imposed by reality itself. Shadow work becomes intolerable because shadow work requires the one capacity fragmented systems resist most: self-confrontation without distortion. Fragmentation produces instability. Instability seeks regulation. Regulation, when not internally available, is sought externally. Control becomes the substitute for coherence. Dominance becomes a substitute for grounding. Modification becomes the substitute for integration. The God complex is not born from strength. It is born from fragmentation intolerant of humility. Yet interculture codes or mechanics propose a radically different trajectory. Evolution through integration, strength through coherence. True stability does not require superiority. True intelligence does not require emotional elimination. True evolution does not require abandonment of humanity. Because humanity itself is not the flaw, fragmentation is. And fragmentation is not resolved by inflation, detachment, or modification. It is resolved by coherence. Wholeness is the only stabilization strategy that does not require distortion. After all, this is a spiritual learning experience. Sometimes wholeness must be mastered through triumph over fragmentation.